We think women need to talk more openly about money because money really matters. It shouldn't be embarrassing or confusing. Join the conversation. We'll be discussing a whole range of topics which will help you get comfortable with your finances. Money Matters. Brought to you by AJ Bell.
Hello everyone, I'm Laura and this is the AJ Bell Money Matters podcast, and with me as ever is Danny. Hey Danny.
Hi Laura, hi everyone, and this episode is in celebration of International Women's Day, with the theme this year being Give to Gain.
And that was the theme that really struck a chord with us at Money Matters, because we know that if women are given the knowledge, the support, and also the practical tools, the returns can be extraordinary, both in terms of our finances, but also in terms of our confidence levels as well.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about confidence on this pod, and there is always one thing that I take away from those discussions, and it's that we can't do it all by ourselves. At some point, we really need to have a little bit of support. We need someone to give so that we can gain, to give knowledge, give practical tips, give mentoring. And I'm absolutely delighted that we've got two guests this week who know all about the power of giving and receiving.
Yeah, so first up is Vicky Smith. She's from SF Technology. She works with businesses to help strengthen and diversify their senior teams. So she definitely knows a thing or two about mentoring, spotting, nurturing new talent. So hey Vicky, thanks for joining us.
Hiya.
And we've also got Claire Simpson, who is the co-founder of a health tech startup, Savas Health. So hi Claire.
Hi, Laura.
Full disclosure, Laura, I met Vicky and Claire at an event celebrating women in tech earlier this year, and I was really struck by their career journeys, how they could both pinpoint key people who'd helped really springboard their careers, but also how they were taking some of their own experiences and trying to give a lift to other women. And they just seem like the absolute embodiment of this year's International Women's Day theme.
And I feel like I've probably done you a bit of a disservice there in my very brief description of what your guys' jobs were. So can you give us a quick overview of your current roles? Let's start with Vicky.
Hi, yes. So currently heading up our business engagement and origination at SF Technology. So I've been in tech recruitment for about 10 years, and then the last 5 years of those has been with SF. And it is a little bit like you've said, very much kind of all around building relationships. It's partnering and supporting business leaders, majority within kind of high growth SME organizations, but to identify those gaps and really funneling down and seeing how we can help shape, specifically at the moment for me, around that technology side of things, and how we can really drive that to then achieve what they are looking for, kind of long-term kind of growth goal, really. So that's kind of a little bit of my focus at the moment.
Perfect. Super interesting. And I'm sure we'll dig more into that later in the podcast. So Claire, if you could do the same.
Yeah, sure. So I've worked in tech for over 20 years now, and that spans from big corporates in financial services to health tech startups, which is probably 12 or more of those years now. And what I'm doing at the moment, I've co-founded my own health tech startup with a very good friend and colleague, doing something quite different to what I've done before. So what we're doing is using AI to predict the risk of chronic disease using routine healthcare data. And we've put a real emphasis on addressing inequalities in healthcare. So gender inequalities are really one of my passion projects, and moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach to medicine.
So quite different roles between you, obviously overlapping on the tech sector, but I think you probably have a lot in common, including a key moment in your career which gave you that helping hand when you needed it most, Vicky.
Yeah, so big part of me was my boss in my last job, actually. I started recruitment very early years. I was like 18, 19. Was quite fortunate enough to kind of progress quite quickly within my career, which meant having to then deal with quite senior people at a very young age. And we talk about kind of imposter syndrome. That was a big thing for me back then, when having to kind of deal with quite senior people. I was thinking, like, they've got way more experience than me. They don't want to listen to what I have to say. Whereas my boss very much kind of said, no, like, you are important. They want to hear, they value what you're saying. Your voice is important, wants to be heard. Which when I'd kind of heard someone tell me that, I think that kind of helped shape my confidence and how I then present myself in a lot of these meetings. Because whether I'm dealing with them from a candidate side or a client side, candidates, I'm helping them find a job. Clients, I'm helping them build up their team, which is essentially going to help achieve what they need to do from their goals. So soon as I kind of understood that actually, yes, that is a big part of what I'm doing, then it massively helped me kind of just build my career from there, really.
Yeah, I think we've all, I don't know, particularly as women working in sectors that are quite male dominated, I think we've all had that kind of imposter syndrome moment, and even more so needed that person who's kind of lifted us up and told us that we don't necessarily need to have that or to overcome that. Claire, do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, a little bit different. That similar kind of idea. So quite early on in my career, I was a project manager for Lloyds Bank, and I really wasn't enjoying it. I decided I was going to start all over again. I had a master's degree in marketing. I was going to do something with that. But thanks to two very inspirational senior managers, incidentally, they were women, who saw my potential. I ended up in a much better career pivot. So one of those women was responsible for the data warehouse at Lloyds. She didn't want me to leave the company, so she introduced me to a team in a completely different area of the bank, who use that data in the data warehouse to drive marketing activities. The other person was a senior manager in that team who basically saw my potential, even though I didn't have the qualifications on paper or the experience. She created a secondment for me, a 6-month secondment. She put me on a SQL course, and she gave me an opportunity to show what I was capable of. That then turned into a permanent job. And I always look back on that moment as a really pivotal sliding doors moment in my career that defined the rest of what I've done since then. But it's really important to say that they also influenced me in other ways. It wasn't just about what I got out of that relationship, but they taught me that the best hires aren't always the ones with the bags of experience. Sometimes it's the people with the raw potential and a really good attitude that can be your best hires. I've definitely taken that forward with me in my hiring activities, in my roles.
I love that. I think there's so many times when, certainly in my career, I've fallen into a role because I've been nudged along by somebody who has recognized my potential, who sort of thought, hang on a second, you could give this a real go, and then maybe bring something a bit different to the role. And I think that is really important as well, because otherwise you just end up with a lot of repetition and nothing moves forward. And those moments, and that support gives you a confidence boost, I think. And the fact that you're both still working in the tech sector, both making waves. And as Laura was saying, it can be tricky for women's voices to be heard in sectors like technology and finance, especially if you're trying to launch a tech business like you have, Claire. So how do you make sure that you're heard without being seen as aggressive?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've nailed this, but there are 3 strategies that I pretty much rely on. So the first one, and this is because I'm a data analyst by background, come to the conversation armed with facts and evidence, because that's a lot more difficult to ignore than an argument that comes across as opinion. The second one is choosing which battles to fight. So in tech and in probably in any business, any role, there are big egos that need managing. So saving my energy for the battles that really matter the most, where the outcome is really important. I've learned how to do that over the last few years. And the third one is using my natural disposition to my advantage. So I'm naturally a very quiet person. So I don't always speak up. I definitely don't speak up just for the sake of it, like some people do. And I find that can have more impact. So when I do say something, it has more impact because it's more unusual than people who speak up commonly. And it also tunes me into those situations as well. If somebody is normally quiet and they speak up, I'm more inclined to listen to them as well. A pet peeve of mine is people talking over the top of me to answer a question I haven't actually finished asking yet, and making assumptions about what I'm about to say instead of properly listening to me. And I used to just get a bit miffed about that. but I've really started calling out colleagues and my husband as well when they do it. Because what I realize is most of the time they don't realize they're doing it. They're not doing it to be an idiot, to be annoying. They just don't realize they're doing it. So I figured that giving them that feedback might help both my situation, but also they might think twice when they're doing it to somebody else.
Based on the number of nods between the four of us here, I think we've all experienced that, and both at work and at home, I would say. But I think having that kind of confidence coming across well, that's doubly important when you get to a leadership role, isn't it? So we know that many women feel capable, but then they feel quite hesitant when it comes to stepping into those leadership roles. I think we've probably all heard that adage of, women applying for a job and feeling like they need to check absolutely every skill off the list on the job spec, where men are much more likely to, tick the box on half of them and think they're fine to apply for it. So in your experience, Vicky, what actually holds women back? I guess crucially, what gives them that confidence to step forward and to put themselves forward for new challenges?
I think a big thing is your confidence. So like you said, women are naturally, they're quite risk adverse. Not like we're all not risk takers, but it doesn't come naturally for us if we've got half the skill set to be like, you know what, I can go for it. They want to feel, and we do want to feel like 100% ready to take that step. And it is a bit of a risk going into that leadership. You get a bit of self-doubt, but then I think it is around having someone that can almost back you a little bit, what Claire's saying. If you're a bit of an introvert and you don't always speak out all the time and you're in a room of people who are probably shouting a lot, but maybe not a lot of substance behind it. Whereas if you've got someone that can then a little bit, whether it's a mentor or a sponsor, who's actually understanding and can recognize those achievements and almost put their neck on the line to vouch for you, to say, look, Claire has done these amazing things. She needs to go for this. She might not say it herself, but she has got this. And I think that is a big part. One, obviously, it's a great thing they're putting you forward for that role, but equally that should build your confidence because you've got someone else putting their almost credibility, their reputation on the line to back you and put you forward for such a big job when you wouldn't have done that yourself. You might not have that confidence. Whereas if they're doing that for you, you're then going to be like, you know what, I must be pretty good at what I do because they're doing that for me. So that you do see in women that I speak to, that helps them because if they wouldn't have done that themselves, they've got someone else shouting for them. And that, again, will then build their confidence. They're able to hopefully be in that leadership position to then now take that down to the people in their team and build that from like the ground down almost. Drop down.
I think that's really interesting because you need the mentors, you need good leadership, good workplaces to really create the policies that help women thrive in the workplace. And Claire, I was really moved by a topic that you wanted to talk about when we met a few weeks ago, because not all of us have the same journey in the workplace. The expectation is that at a certain point you'll get married, you'll have children, but that's not the same thing for everybody. There are so many different shapes and sizes of families and relationships these days. And it can be really damaging if people just expect that everyone's going to walk the same path.
Yeah, the workplace is definitely not designed for women at the moment, although that definitely is changing. And it's really hard on its own just navigating life changes when policies are in place. So when you do go through those expected life stages like pregnancy, maternity leave, but what a lot of companies don't have is policies in place for things like IVF and miscarriages. Sadly, they're much more common than you think because many women feel the need to keep quiet about those journeys to protect their own careers. There was a survey done by the Fertility Matters at Work group. 61% of women keep quiet for fear of unfair treatment at work about their journeys. 36% considered leaving or actually left their job during fertility treatment, and 69% took time off sick to hide it. So those are quite staggering stats, I think. And I can relate to them because I kept quiet about my own journey. It became clear to me when I did speak about it to trusted sources that people were making assumptions about IVF as a magic pill that always results in a baby. It didn't for me. And I didn't want those assumptions to result in other people making decisions about my career opportunities. So by doing that, it became quite a source of stress and anxiety. Needing time off at the drop of a hat was quite difficult to manage because it was always the case that clashed with an important meeting. Or things like using annual leave for surgical procedures and then coming back to the office and people saying, "Oh, did you have a nice time off?" And I'm really uncomfortable because of what I've just been through, and probably coming back to the office sooner than I was physically and mentally ready to. So yeah, it was really, really tough, and I never really felt like I had the support in place, whether that was real or perceived. So I think I really support companies that are doing lots of work to make workplaces more fertility friendly, like Fertility Matters at Work and Fertility Network UK. And I know there are companies that really do address this, and I can't wait for a future where every woman's journey is accommodated in those policies.
Yeah, that just sounds like a really difficult journey to go through, let alone then trying to juggle the workplace and your colleagues' perceptions of why you've been off. And I do think, I'm hopeful that there are more conversations happening about it and more companies are realizing that this is a big factor of life for lots of not just women, but couples as well, because there is, also a male impact on it, and that they are adopting that into their policies much more. And I think we can only be hopeful that will bring about real change, not just at a policy level, but also within the culture of companies, of people being able to speak up more about this stuff and speak more freely about it without a fear of the kind of impact that it's going to have on their career, or just talking about children more generally. I mean, I think it's still quite rare in a workplace for a younger woman to openly say that she plans to have children in a certain time period at work, presumably because of the fear of kind of the negative connotations, or women at interview asking about maternity policies. I think it's things like that there's still such a big cultural shift when it comes to women in the workplace and women having children. And I think we can only be hopeful that will change. But Vicky, I mean, you help kind of shape those teams. So how much do you think the makeup of a leadership team impacts those workplace policies and what companies put in place?
It's got a huge impact. I mean, like, firstly, from a recruit perspective, I think it's on us as well, as much as kind of a leadership team, because we're the one that are going to be placing these people into these leadership teams, and we need to take accountability to try and get that diversity to almost be the people that are going to be a bit controversial and they are going to make those decisions on that side. I think policies reflect the experience of the people making those decisions, essentially. If you've got a leadership team that are all very similar backgrounds, very similar kind of career paths, unintentionally, they are going to design a workplace that suits kind of an environment like them. It'll suit people like them. This is when then you do need to make it more diverse, whether that be gender, life stage, your career route, whatever that might be. But you'll naturally then see your careers changing and the conversations will be changing. So the flexibility isn't just kind of, it becomes more of a productivity tool. It's that performance that is measured on that side of things. So parental leave, IVF, miscarriage, stuff like that will then come into conversations. It won't just be, oh, I'll have a bit of maternity. And I know a lot of both candidates and clients I speak to, it's almost a bit of a fear to be pregnant, because it's like, well, I've got myself up to this really great position. If I then go away, let's say for 9-12 months, what's going to happen to my role? And I've had it in certain cases when people have come back and almost been not forced, but they've been like, would you rather take a bit of a lower role because you're going to have to deal with childcare, and and they're almost just assuming that they're going to have to do that. And it's not, you almost feel like you don't have a choice, or that's what's perceived that you have to do. Whereas if you have these people that are already at leadership that understand what that is, when you are coming in, they'll probably already hopefully shape these policies and be like, this is what's expected. This is kind of, hopefully you'll feel safe in the environment that you're coming back to. And I think that's a big thing that we need to be doing. And again, probably nowhere near it should be at the minute, but hopefully seeing that it is starting to kind of shape into that kind of world.
Huge progressions from when I was having kids, and also the fact that we're also having conversations about things like menopause in the workplace, because I went through early menopause and it just wasn't discussed, and people just didn't know how to react if you suddenly had brain fog and you weren't able to quite perform in the way that you used to perform. But I know, Claire, you only have a small team at the moment, but you're really active on LinkedIn. You mentor a lot of people. And I think that mentorship for every stage of our life is so important, to be able to have conversations with people that have been through what you're going through or what you might go through. It makes a massive difference to women in their careers. So what makes a good mentor?
Yeah, and I'm not as active on LinkedIn as I would like at the moment. It's a full-time job in itself, keeping content on there, isn't it? But what I do is when people reach out to me for some support, I always try to help, whether that's by giving some advice if I'm qualified to do that, or making an onward connection to somebody I think could help, or a network that might be useful to them. But in terms of what makes a good mentor, from my point of view, where I've been mentored and what I try to pass on, is not about having the answers. It's about helping people to know what their choices are and then make an informed choice by themselves. It's not up to me to make a choice for them, but to help them through that process. And then encouraging people to do hard things, to apply for jobs that make them feel uncomfortable, or put themselves into a speaking role that might make them feel uncomfortable. Also challenging their assumptions where they might be wrong, where they might need to have a look inward about how they're projecting themselves. And I think another role, which Vicky and I kind of touched on as well, is being a mentor that can dream big on that person's behalf when they're not capable of doing that for themselves, and really helping them to see what they're capable of, to give them that confidence to follow through on all of those actions. So that would be my definition of a good mentor.
Yeah, and I think when I think of mentors, I think of that kind of more formal mentoring, mentee kind of relationship. But actually, you're right. Quite often it can be more informal than that, and kind of have a softer side to it than that. I mean, Vicky, how important have mentors been, particularly when you're thinking about empowering women to take on those leadership roles?
Like massively important. I mean, even from, if I take my own experience, I probably wouldn't be where I am without a mentor. I think they are a huge part of building your confidence. They are it's your kind of guidance point a little bit. Like Claire said, it's not telling you what to do, but it's showing you opportunities, what you can do. And not saying your mentor has to be a woman, but if you have got someone that is quite a successful, powerful woman that you're really looking up to, it almost gives you that encouragement to say, well, you've done it, I could do that kind of thing. And I think it is making you aware that there is those opportunities. Why can you not be a leader? If they're doing it and they're doing really successfully, hopefully that kind of builds that confidence for you to be like, I can do this. Like, I'll build myself up, and to kind of almost birth into whatever you want it to be, really. But I'd say they're a huge part of kind of that whole confidence piece, really.
Just to round it out, I mean, I could keep talking to you guys forever, but Claire, I'm aware that we haven't really got to grips with what you do, what your company is doing, and you're creating products which are hopefully going to help a lot of women. And tech has potentially more jargon than even finance does, and it can be really off-putting, and really sort of edge women out from engaging. So how do you make sure that what you're doing and the kind of tech you're implementing doesn't impact the customer journey, that really sort of supports the female customer journey?
Yeah, so Silence Health is a B2B product, and the target audience for that is really clinicians. So that is probably not quite as relevant, but I also still consult for other health tech companies and startups, particularly in the wearable space and the consumer app space. And the main way that I add value to those teams is getting development teams of men to understand why women need something different and how standard algorithms don't work for women's bodies, and then helping them to build that into the product. And recently, for one of our clients, I delivered a crash course in the female menstrual cycle. And it was really, really well. Obviously, I've done this a few times now, and I'm always a bit like, oh, how's this going to land? But they're actually really fascinated. It also strikes me every time how little women know about their own bodies. So by helping the teams to understand, hey, standard algorithms don't work, this is why, and this is what we need to do differently, that's where I'm adding value. And then building that, making sure that those features empower the female users. Again, it's not prescribing, telling anyone what they should be doing. It's giving them the information they need to make an informed decision about what's right for them. And then making sure that's done with empathetic language. So coming back to some of the things that I was talking about earlier, when people don't follow, lots of different things happen through the life stage. They need empathy and they need to be spoken about with the right language. And even things like data privacy concerns around reproductive and menstrual cycle data that's become much more salient in the last year or so. So all of those things is how I add value to my clients who are working in health tech, even though that's probably less relevant for my Sava's health product right now.
I love the idea of menstrual chats with men. I'm not sure I'd be bold enough to do that in the office. But I really appreciate you guys sharing your stories with us today. I mean, there's such a kind of wide-ranging load of topics there, but some really, really useful stuff and some really good passion that came across there. But I hope you don't mind. We're not going to get rid of my favourite bit of the podcast, which is confession time.
No, don't worry. Claire and Vicky have been forewarned because I know it's your favourite bit of the podcast. So it's the time when we ask all of our guests to share with us a financial confession or dilemma. Today we get two for the price of one. Who wants to go first? Vicky?
I can go first. It's more of a confession, if anything. So it's purely fun. I wanted to go on a ski trip. It was my first ski trip last year. I'll be honest, probably shouldn't have, but I did. So I put it all on my credit card and I was like, it's fine. And it was just at the time when I'd moved into a new flat, which probably was a little bit ahead of like what I could afford, but I was like, oh, it'll be okay. It's fine. And I'll be honest, it took me a very long time. I kept on being in my credit card and I kept getting my paycheck and I'd pay one lot of credit card and then I'd want to get an ASOS order and then someone else would snowball all on. So yeah, it took quite a few months to pay off that skiing trip. But I'll be honest with you, it was all worth it in the end. But maybe not the best time when you just go into a new flat with a lot more price. But oh well.
We've all been there. We've all made that purchase with the optimistic view that we'll be able to pay it off very quickly, and maybe that's not panned out. Claire, what's yours?
So mine's more of a dilemma. So with reference to the unsuccessful IVF journey that I spoke about earlier, my husband and I are going through quite a period of adjustment and a really significant mindset shift. Because whilst lots of people that we know are focused on accumulating wealth, mindful of being able to support their children, leave a bit of a legacy, help them out in life, we realize we don't need to do that. So we have a different goal, which is how do we spend it all? So our dilemma is how do we optimize saving enough for a comfortable retirement with living our best lives right now so that we don't leave a penny in the bank account when we leave this planet?
Yeah, that is a really interesting dilemma. I think it kind of turns like you say, the kind of we must save as much as possible. But actually, how do you enjoy your money? Because ultimately, what's the point of earning the money if you can't enjoy it? But I can see how you've probably been having to save for that IVF journey and other things. And so switching mindset with money, I think, is one of the trickiest things, whether it's switching into a savings habit or switching into a spending habit. It does require a bit of kind of mental gymnastics to switch your view, doesn't it?
I can't imagine ever getting to the point where I get to switch my view to a spending habit. Yes. but that's where I am in my life at the moment. Look, thank you so much, both of you, for giving up your time to talk to us. Vicky, Claire, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And I know we can find both of you on LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Perfect. And you can also get in touch with us as well on LinkedIn, but also Instagram and Facebook. And if you haven't already signed up to our newsletter, then definitely check it out. You can find all of our great Money Matters content on the AJ Bell Women and Investing Hub. And our next podcast episode is about one of those things that should be on all of our to-do lists, writing a will. So keep an ear out for that wherever you listen to your podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Before you go, please remember this podcast is for educational purposes, and the views expressed don't necessarily reflect those of AJ Bell. The podcast isn't telling you if a certain investment is suitable or not. Don't forget that the value of investments can change, and you can lose money as well as make it. It's also important to remember that how you're taxed will depend on your individual circumstances, and rules can change. The way an investment performed in the past may not be the same as how it behaves in the future. If you want help, go see a qualified financial advisor.